I'm meeting today with Kristin Hodson, and rather than me introduce her, I'll just have you take care of that yourself.
Okay. My name's Kristin Hodson. I'm a certified sex therapist, a relationship counselor. I'm owner and founder of The Healing Group, a local clinic specializing in sex and relationships and women's mental health. I also am owner and founder of a website called Sex Made Simple, where we do a lot of sex education and address topics on healthy sexuality.
So why are you talking about divorce with me today then?
Well, one of the common things when I see clients is the topic of infidelity. And so many people, this is the root cause of what ultimately leads them to divorce.
Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah,
all right.
so that's why I'm here.
We're going to talk today about infidelity because there's a lot of misunderstandings both in the mental health field and in the field of law.
Right.
And we're going to talk a little bit about understanding them better, because once you have a clearer understanding, you're going to be able to get rid of a lot of the cruft, and you're going to focus on what really matters. So Kristin, take it away. What's the first thing that you want people to know about that they should be better aware of?
So the first thing I want people to know, and I talk with my clients, is what is infidelity? What does that even mean? That's a big blanket term, and for everybody it means something different. And so to really have a grip on what that is, there's no right or wrong answer. It's what did you guys agree to when you went into your relationship and or your marriage? What did you agree to? What were the terms? Could you have friendships with the opposite sex? What about social media relationships? Physical, what was the level? And most people, what I find is they go into a relationship and there's assumptions. They assume that the other person knows what their monogamy agreement is and what they both agreed to under the umbrella of being faithful. And so the first thing is, what are you seeing as being unfaithful and defining as infidelity?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the monogamy agreement part of that too, because I assume that one of the problems, because we talked briefly before we went on camera, that especially if the couple is of the same faith or same culture, it may just be assumed without discussing it between the two of them what that agreement would entail. So,
very much so.
So why have a monogamy agreement then?
So that it really is making the implicit, or what you think you both understand or assuming, explicit. So you're very, very clear on this is where our relationship, these are the boundaries of our relationship, so that there's not any surprises, so there's not any so that you can be transparent. And I find that to be really important, and not too many people have that conversation.
Yeah, in fact, I was thinking about that. There might be situations where somebody might say, I think that like commenting on how pretty another girl is might offend your spouse if you're the other member of the couple.
Absolutely.
And others might say, oh no, in fact she really is quite good looking. Yeah, I agree, and they don't feel threatened by that. It's not like you say. Is it a matter of whether it's right or wrong, or just a matter of being sensitive to the other person's feelings?
It's also what have you both agreed to, and there can be some negotiation, and so assumption is probably the worst case scenario. And so if you haven't talked about your part, if you're unsure, check in, ask, go to the expert in the relationship with is your partner, and you're also the expert as well.
Another thing that we talked about was along these same lines. What should couples do to avoid the stress and the strains? I mean, you talked a little bit about crisis, and I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm not sure the viewers would either. What's this idea about crisis in a relationship?
Well, when you discover an affair, oftentimes the first thing that happens is individuals in the couple go into a state of crisis. It kind of can feel like the whole world is being turned upside down. Things that they thought that they knew about the partner, suddenly they feel like they don't know them anymore.
Could you give me an example? I think I know what you're talking about. But
yeah.
Would that be something like certain sex practices that were assumed to be completely verboten, or just the other way around? It's like, oh yeah,
or thinking
I assumed you were perfectly fine with that, or something like that? Is that
well, no, not necessarily.
Okay.
Feeling like, okay, the partner's coming home every single night, they really value family, they seem to value their relationship, and yet you find out that they've been having a relationship for the past year, and suddenly you feel a lot of betrayal, and you're wondering, what, do I even know this person? And so that can be really disorienting, because your go-to person, the person you trusted, the person you felt like you could be completely safe with, is suddenly someone that you oftentimes don't feel like you know anymore. I should also say this is really common when people they have pornography and they view that as infidelity. And so that can just be disorienting. And so whenever a couple or an individual is in a state of crisis, I don't think that's the best time to make big lifelong decisions. to get support during that crisis, that's what you should do, or to take a breather, or to get a lot of self-care and support. But making big decisions, that's not the time.
We talked a little bit about when you find yourself in a situation where you either pretty much objectively have been betrayed or maybe feel betrayed, but you think, but I still want to work on my relationship. I mean, that's wonderful, right?
Yeah. And there are a lot of people where after an affair, the relationship actually becomes stronger because it cracks open aspects of the relationship that weren't working. And so it can bring those to the surface, couples can work on it, and now the relationship's a lot more resilient.
But you told me about a situation where, I mean, for lack of a better term, you know it better than I do. It's like the sheer force of your will isn't going to save a relationship if your partner is also not committed. What did you call that?
Mixed agendas,
Yeah.
meaning one person is all the way in, I want to fix this, I want to make our relationship better, and the other person's kind of like, I'm not so sure, or they're not interested in fixing the relationship at all. And so a resource that's really good for this is discernment counseling. It's not marriage counseling. It's strictly to see if you guys can get on the same page on where you would like the relationship to go, the direction. Would you like to keep it status quo? Would you like to jump into counseling? Or would you like to end the relationship? And going through this process can make it much more productive, both time and financially.
I would assume it also helps because it's just going to spare you a lot of disappointment and heartache if you find out sooner than later that just because you think it's worth saving the relationship and just because you think you're so wonderful for being forgiving, and I'm not making fun of those people. In other words,
Right.
You're like, hey, I've been hurt, I didn't deserve this, therefore, kind of like a covert contract with the unfaithful spouse, right? You
Right.
owe me.
Right.
You have to love me more now.
Right,
Right?
and that's
Stuff
not
like that?
always the case.
All right.
For some people, they're out, this is when they want the relationship to be done, and that's important to figure that out. And another common question that I have found with couples is, when do you know it's over? And I say, when one partner doesn't want to work on it anymore, they're not willing to change, they're not willing to take ownership and both parties oftentimes need to take ownership in what contributed to the downfall of the relationship. But if you have one person that's just not willing to work, it almost gives you nothing to work with.
Along those lines then, where you've got a question of infidelity of whatever kind somebody may feel is infidelity,
Mm-hmm.
and that person wants to stop for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned something else about there's actually a proper way to go about breaking off the affair.
Well, the natural reaction is just to end the relationship now. If you find out your partner's cheated, just never talk to them again. And while that's fine, if the relationship's been going on for a long time, there's an established relationship. And so I like to help couples do, it's based on the work of Tammy Nelson, ending an affair with integrity. Actually treating that other person like a human being and bringing actual closure to that relationship so it doesn't linger in the future. Because oftentimes an abrupt ending, a partner may go and find them behind the scenes, and you just don't want that.
Okay. I was also going to ask, how long does it take for couples to warm to the subject? Now, let's assume that this isn't one characterized by really traumatic experiences on either side. So you don't have somebody who's had a different, like a rape or a sexual abuse in their past, but just two average people, but they're having a difficult time in their relationship and in their sex life. How long have you noticed in general does it take for a couple to warm to you, and when do you become effective? I mean, one visit, two visits, you know what I mean?
Okay, warm to the idea of counseling?
No. They've decided to come to counseling. In fact, we'll talk about when getting to that idea, how you should raise that. That's actually a better question. I should have started there. But what I'm saying, but once they've decided to do that, how long does it take people? Because I assume that if they're having problems in their relationship already, talking to you just adds more complexity at first. It makes it feel even more awkward. Yeah, Jen.
It can.
So what's it take?
So if you're going in for discernment counseling, which we talked about a little bit earlier, that's between 1 to 6 sessions where you're figuring out the intention of what you're going to do with your relationship. If you're coming in for couples counseling, I use a research-based approach called emotionally focused therapy by Sue Johnson, and that can take anywhere from 6 to 20 sessions, but the results are really long-term, and couples find, even though it's awkward or talking about sex and relationships is new, couples oftentimes feel a lot of benefit from putting things out on the table, getting new perspective, learning new communication skills, and increasing the bond and strength of their relationship.
So 1 to 6 to warm to the subject, or 1 to 6 and you're done?
1 to 6, no, 1 to 6 if you're trying to figure out the direction you want your relationship to go. If you know you want to work on the relationship, anywhere from 6 to 20, but I would say on average it's between about 12 and 20 sessions to really get your relationship to a place where you've seen a lot of meaningful change.
And you're kind enough to tell us it's an average. We're not holding you,
No.
of course, but it's nice to know, because people would like to ask that, and some people are so vague and evasive about it.
Absolutely.
So thanks.
It can take longer. I've worked with people that it takes a year or two. It just depends.
What about the other subject you talked about, and that is, how do you approach your partner about your relationships and discussions of sex? What's the right way, what's the wrong way? I'm sure you have an opinion on that.
I do. I often say, don't talk about sex and relationship the last thing you do before you go to bed. That's an old myth of we shouldn't go to bed mad. But a lot of people talking when you're tired and fatigued at the end of the day, that's not the best time. So scheduling a time and saying, hey, I would like to talk about our relationship and how we can improve that. And I don't know if you know what I just did there, but I moved it from the dreaded dun 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 of we need to talk to I'd like to talk to you about our relationship and how we can make it better. That is an approach that can take someone's defenses down and make them intrigued and more open to wanting to talk. I find that to be a really great strategy. Another one is a positive sandwich of, I really like when you did this. I liked how you came in and you complimented me. I would love it if you then did that. And again, once again, thank you for all the compliments. So you kind of sandwich in the complaint with a couple of positive things that they're doing well. Everyone wants to know what they're doing well and what's going right. Far too often we just focus on what people are doing wrong.
Is there anything that you tell the couples to work on between them, or does most of the work happen in the sessions with you?
No, I provide a lot of books and resources and skills so they can work on stuff in between session. But a lot of the things I'm helping them to help meet each other's needs. What makes them feel really loved and safe in a relationship. So I'm helping them do that. I'm helping them learn how to communicate more effectively so their partner can hear them and that their message is being heard.
What are some of the things that you would recommend people read if they just want to try to give themselves some self-help, or in preparing to come and meet with you for the first time? What would you recommend?
So I think that there's a couple of great books that I really like. One is called The New Monogamy by Tammy Nelson, and that guides people through kind of the phases of an affair and how to work through it. And then the other one is called Getting Past the Affair. This is a really great self-help book for couples. And there's a book also written for therapists so you can work in tandem. So those are two great resources they can check out on their own.
Final question before I have them get your contact information just before we go, because if you'd like to get in touch with Kristin, we'll have that at the end of the video. But what do sessions cost generally? And is there any coverage through insurance?
That's a great question, and I'm really glad you asked. I would say on average, sessions are going to cost anywhere from $90 to $150, and insurance does not cover couples counseling at all. So if you're trying to go through your insurance, unfortunately, I have not ever seen an insurance company that will cover that.
All right, see, but we're nothing if not honest with people in these videos, and Kristin, thank you so much. Would you please give them all your contact information one more time, and again, we'll have that written down at the end of this video too.
Yeah, you can find us at thehealinggroup.com, and or you can go to sexmadesimple.com, and that's where you can find me.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.